The Bet, by Anton Chekhov, is a deeply philosophical short story that examines the nature of freedom, the illusion of wealth, the limits of intellectual pride, and the psychological consequences of extreme isolation. Through a simple wager between two men, Chekhov exposes how human values shift over time and how certainty, when pushed to extremes, can lead to emptiness rather than truth. The story opens at a lavish party hosted by a wealthy banker. The guests engage in casual conversation that soon turns into a serious debate about capital punishment. Some argue that execution is more humane than lifelong imprisonment, claiming that death ends suffering instantly, while imprisonment slowly destroys the human spirit. The banker strongly supports this view, believing that life imprisonment is crueler than death. A young lawyer, however, passionately disagrees. He insists that life, under any circumstances, is always preferable to death. To him, existence itself, no matter how restricted, is more valuable than non-existence. What begins as a philosophical disagreement quickly escalates due to ego and pride. The banker, confident in his wealth and authority, challenges the lawyer with a reckless wager. He offers a large sum of money if the lawyer agrees to spend 15 years in voluntary solitary confinement. The lawyer, driven by youthful idealism, intellectual arrogance, and confidence in his own mental strength, accepts the challenge without fully understanding its consequences. The bet is finalized impulsively, without legal safeguards or moral reflection, setting the stage for tragedy disguised as ambition. The conditions of the bet are strict. The lawyer must remain alone in a small lodge on the banker's property. He may not leave or have any direct contact with other human beings. He is allowed books, music, writing materials, food, and wine, but no physical interaction. If he breaks the rules even once, he forfeits the money. The confinement is voluntary, yet it becomes more severe than most real prisons because it removes human connection entirely. During the early years of confinement, the lawyer suffers intensely from loneliness and boredom. He seeks comfort in novels, light reading, and music. Wine becomes a companion, dulling the pain of isolation. These early years reflect the lawyer's lingering attachment to pleasure and distraction. He still clings to worldly comforts, even though he is physically removed from society. His mind is restless, hungry for stimulation, and unsettled by silence. As time passes, the lawyer's interests begin to change. He gradually abandons fiction and entertainment and turns towards serious intellectual pursuits. He studies languages obsessively, mastering several within a short period. He reads philosophy, history, science, and theology. His reading becomes intense and relentless, as if knowledge itself has replaced human interaction. The lawyer's mind expands, but his emotional connection to life diminishes. This transformation marks a turning point in the story. The lawyer no longer seeks pleasure, comfort, or distraction. Instead, he seeks understanding. However, Chekhov subtly suggests that this understanding comes at a cost. The lawyer's isolation strips him not only of illusion, but also of empathy, warmth, and desire. His intellectual growth is paired with emotional detachment. Meanwhile, the banker's life outside the lodge deteriorates in a different way. Once wealthy, confident, and powerful, the banker loses much of his fortune through reckless speculation and poor financial decisions. Time humbles him. What once felt like an insignificant wager now threatens his survival. As the 15 years near their end, the banker becomes consumed by fear and regret. He realizes that paying the bet would ruin him financially. The banker begins to resent the lawyer, even though the lawyer has done nothing wrong. This resentment reveals the banker's moral decline. He reflects on how foolish and arrogant he was to gamble with another man's life simply to prove a point. The banker's wealth once gave him a sense of superiority, but now that wealth is slipping away, so is his sense of moral certainty. On the final night before the lawyer is due to win the money, the banker sneaks into the lodge. He intends to see the man who has silently endured 15 years of isolation. Inside, he finds the lawyer asleep at a desk, surrounded by books and manuscripts. The banker notices how thin, pale, and aged the lawyer has become. The physical decay contrasts sharply with the intellectual achievement suggested by the volumes of knowledge he has consumed. The banker reads a letter written by the lawyer, and this letter becomes the philosophical climax of the story. In it, the lawyer explains that through years of reading and contemplation, he has come to despise worldly values. He declares that wealth, fame, pleasure, and ambition are meaningless illusions. Human achievements, he writes, are temporary and empty. Knowledge itself, while vast, ultimately leads to the realization that nothing truly matters in the material world. The lawyer announces that he will renounce the money. He plans to leave the confinement just minutes before the 15 years are completed, thereby deliberately losing the bet. This decision shocks the banker. The lawyer's sacrifice is not an act of weakness, but an act of final rejection. By refusing the money, the lawyer proves that wealth no longer has power over him. In that moment, the banker understands that he has been defeated, not financially, but morally and spiritually. The lawyer has achieved a kind of inner freedom, while the banker has lost his sense of dignity. The banker briefly considers killing the lawyer to escape financial ruin, revealing how fear and greed have corrupted him. However, shame overcomes him, and he leaves the lodge without committing violence. As promised, the lawyer leaves the lodge shortly before the 15 years end, forfeiting the money. He disappears into the world, detached and indifferent. The bet officially ends, but there is no true winner. The banker keeps his money but loses his peace of mind. The lawyer gains wisdom but loses connection to life itself. Chekhov's brilliance lies in his refusal to present a clear moral victory. The lawyer's extreme intellectualism leads to detachment rather than fulfillment. His rejection of life's pleasures borders on nihilism. The banker's materialism leads to fear, regret, and moral decay. Both men are victims of their own extremes. The story ultimately questions the value of proving philosophical points through real human suffering. The bet begins as an abstract argument, but it destroys both participants in different ways. Chekhov suggests that wisdom gained in isolation may lack compassion, and wealth gained without morality leads to emptiness. The bet is not a story about choosing between wealth and knowledge, it is a warning against absolute certainty. When humans cling too tightly to ideas, whether material or intellectual, they risk losing balance. True wisdom, Chekhov implies, lies not in extremes, but in moderation, humility, and human connection. The final feeling of the story is one of quiet tragedy. Nothing explodes. No dramatic punishment occurs. Instead, both men walk away diminished, reminding the reader that life is not a philosophical experiment, and that the cost of arrogance is often paid slowly, silently, and irreversibly.